Good morning. Welcome to Channing Unitarian Universalist Church. We're glad that you joined us for worship today. Whoever you are, whatever your theological, spiritual, political, sexual, or racial orientation, or gender identity, you are welcome to worship here, become a part of this community. Do we have any announcements?
I'll start. The community yard sale, which is April 23rd this month, it's a Saturday after Easter. We are looking for donations. If you're cleaning out or doing some summer cleaning, you have items that you want to get rid of, you can bring them to the church. The church will have a couple of tables there. We're looking for donations for the bake table. So if you can help with that, we appreciate that. And we need a few workers to have on church table. So if you can't do it all day, that's fine. If you can do it for a few hours, that would be great. And maybe we can do 2 or 3 shifts within the course of the day. We still have tables available if anybody wants to rent a table. See me, Erin, or Donna.
So,
we have the raffle calendars are ready for sale today. They're $5 each, and will be for the winners in May. And if anyone wants to take some calendars to sell to their family or friends or co-workers, we'll have that available to you after the service.
Coffee House is this Saturday. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's up on Saturday. Yeah, April 9th. So we're gonna try to maybe set up some tables today after service. We don't have to set up the whole thing, but start getting slowly working on that.
We need baked goods. If you're baking something like the cake or brownies that has to be cut, please do not cut it or make holes. We can try and make them all the same size. And if anybody wants to volunteer, we're always looking for volunteers.
And as a reminder, if you are a citizen or resident of Rockland, town elections are also this Saturday. So, one of the big races, there's 2 seats open for Board of Selectmen, 2 seats open on the school committee. There's a seat open on the Board of Health, park supervisor. There's 2 people running for that position, and a ton of others, mostly running out of posts. But the school committee and the selectmen and the board of health are probably the most important ones right now. Right, and with that, I will yield the floor to our guest minister for the day, Reverend Vera OBrien.
Morning.
Morning.
It's nice to be back with you and to be doing this service in person today too. Let us join together in the spirit of prayer. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and be inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Amen.
Please stand as you're willing and able for the lighting of the chalice. And recite with me the words of the order of service. Kindling this flame of our liberal heritage in the chalice of community. Let us open to the presence of the sacred. And now the affirmation, please. Love is the doctrine of the church, the quest for truth in sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus to be covenant with each other and with God. Now, singing from the great hymnal, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. If it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others. Listen even more to their silence. We now have the opportunity to share our joys and concerns with one another. I'll start on the candle of joy over the triumphant return of Happy Hour.
Joy, running back to yellow, yesterday, hard work. Yeah.
Can with joy, I think it's yes, to be a word, is the last word. Joy.
Okay.
The joy for my great niece Sabrina, who's had a boy, freedom. And I'm very grateful for times.
I have a sorrow. Friend from college is 29 and she's diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. Sarah. Paul.
I can't oppose people in Ukraine. People affected by the war.
With one more for all the joys and concerns of the whole province. Please stand as you're willing and able to join in singing Spirit of Life.
I invite you to join me in responsive reading number 637 in the back of the grade. A litany of atonement. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. We forgive ourselves and each other. For each time when our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible. We forgive ourselves and each other. For For each time that we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
Forgive ourselves and each other.
For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
And each other.
For losing sight of our unity. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other.
Purpose of church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring human beings closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that will support the self-supporting church and its many ministries. The gifts of the congregation most gratefully received. Please stand as you're willing and able for the dedication of the gifts.
Sorry, I haven't done this one in a while.
Neither.
Maybe yours. All right, my apologies.
We live in uncertain times. War, disease, climate change, shootings. I could go on, but I'm sure I don't need to. We are all too well acquainted with these concerns and others. It's easy to feel helpless, to feel paralyzed, to even feel numb in response to the ongoing reporting about all the violence in our world. After one of the shootings, I did a little research to try to better understand why these events happened. I was dismayed to learn that many well-respected experts have determined that the most violence is caused by personal disputes, not by politics or ideology. Many of the most egregious acts of violence, some of the well-known shootings, were actually disputes between family members or friends that ended with 3 or more deaths. I found this to be pretty shocking. But I also realized that this meant we could have some influence on preventing some of these senseless deaths. While most of us may not feel we have the skills or resources to have a major impact on world peace or on random acts of public violence, we certainly do have the ability, more than we may have realized, to influence peace in our own relationships and thereby our own communities. Perhaps then we can even start to reverse this trend of senseless violence. The title of this sermon, Peace Treaty, came from a book by Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. described Thich Nhat Hanh as a humble monk and an apostle of peace and nonviolence. He used those words when nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of his efforts for peace and an end to the hostilities in Vietnam. Thai, as he was called by his students, passed on this past January after a lifetime devoted to creating peace. We lost one of the great peacemakers of our time. The title of the book is Anger, and the subtitle is Wisdom for Cooling the Flames. I recommend it to you. I recommend any of his writing to you, actually. He suggests that in the face of anger, the anger that naturally arises in our relationships, that a peace treaty be created, maybe even put in writing, between partners or parents and children, any of our closest, dearest relationships that need to be repaired. Or as we read together, when we need to forgive ourselves, forgive each other, and begin again in love. He describes such a peace treaty as a treaty of true love and encourages us to develop a peace strategy. Our peace strategy might involve arranging for our own personal peace talks when we find a close relationship is suffering. He even provides language for us to use when we are struggling with restoring peace, suggesting, "Darling, I love you. I am angry and I am suffering. I am doing my best. I am trying to not blame anyone else, including you. I need your help to get out of this anger, this suffering. Please help me." If you're already thinking it's no use, my partner, my parent, my friend, my child, they will never change, that would never work. Consider this. We say as Unitarian Universalists in our principles and purposes that we affirm and promote the worth and dignity of every person. Or as the children's version says, we believe each and every person is important. This belief is one of the main reasons I'm a Unitarian Universalist. But how many of us, myself included, can honestly say we do this? Every person? Really? In my experience, it's sure easier to honor the worth and dignity of the people we like, who we respect, and who treat us well. So how do we honor the worth and dignity of the people who drive us crazy? without losing track of our own worth and dignity. So even our enemies, yes, we all have enemies if we're honest about it, or you might prefer to say difficult people in our lives. Drawing upon Buddhism again, I find that when the Dalai Lama, spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism and recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989, when he teaches, he powerfully reframes our common experiences, and he helps me translate our UU principles into practical action. For example, consider this approach to problematic people in your life, or maybe even in your congregation. The Dalai Lama says, if you can cultivate the right attitude, your enemies are your best spiritual teachers, because their presence provides you with the opportunity to enhance and develop your capacity for compassion. He continues, so even for the practice of your own spiritual path, the presence of the enemy is crucial. Merely thinking about compassion and reason and patience will not be enough to develop those qualities. We must wait for difficulties to arise and then try to practice compassion, patience, and tolerance. He also suggests that it's often the case in personal and public life that with a change of circumstances, enemies become friends. So anger and hatred are our real enemies. They are the real enemies we need to confront and defeat, not just the temporary enemies who appear through life. I can personally attest to the transformative nature of working at this practice. I found myself becoming truly grateful for certain enemies in my life, and this transformed me and somehow healed the relationship. In a prior career, I worked for someone who I found it very, very difficult to be with. That's an understatement. I was often in lengthy meetings with him, which were usually uncomfortable. But I decided to try this practice of trying to be more grateful for him and trying to be more compassionate. I would breathe and imagine that, like all of us, he just wanted to be happy and healthy. I would also imagine, even though I didn't know any of the details, that like all of us, he had suffered in his life. And I would consider, as Reverend Richard Gilbert tells us in one of my favorite readings, that we are all more human than otherwise, and that strength and weakness, arrogance and humility, confidence and fear live together in each one of us, reminding us that we share a common humanity. In this practice, I would also wish him well. I'll be honest, at first this practice was extremely difficult. It did get easier, and since we were together quite a bit, I had a lot of time to practice. Then something changed, and our relationship really improved. I imagine what changed was me. I suspect that as I was more open-hearted, he sensed that at some level and responded. So I encourage you to try to truly appreciate the family members, co-workers, the neighbors who are presenting you with the opportunity to be more loving and compassionate. You might be surprised at the result. If prayer is part of your spiritual practice, you might offer prayers of gratitude and understanding for each person. Thich Nhat Hanh says, it is wrong to think that if the other person does not change or improve, then nothing can improve. There are always ways to create more peace, joy, and harmony, and you have access to them. The way you walk, the way you smile, the way you breathe, all of this is very important. You must begin with this. He reminds us that we must begin with our own sense of peace. Maybe as spring arrives and the world renews itself before our eyes again, you might take steps to renew your own sense of inner peace. I'm guessing that you know what you have been thinking of doing for your own well-being. So if not now, when? And perhaps we might be catalysts for the repair of other people's relationships. In my work as a chaplain, one of the regrets I hear all the time as people approach the end of their lives is a regret that they didn't repair or reconcile a relationship. Almost every day, a patient or family member says to me, "I thought we had more time." Again, why wait? Perhaps there is someone you might call or write to, someone to reconnect with or repair the relationship while there is still time. Once upon a time, two sisters lived side by side. They both owned farms. One grew the sweetest grapes for miles around, and the other one grew vegetables. A small creek separated their farms. For decades, the sisters were as close as could be. Folks in town said if you saw one sister, you knew the other sister was nearby. They shared meals, tools, stories. Their children played together in the creek, and life was peaceful. Then one day they had a disagreement. It wasn't about much, but they couldn't resolve it. Slowly, the disagreement became an argument, and bitterness set into each other's hearts, and they stopped communicating entirely. One day, one sister answered a knock at the door to find a carpenter who said, "Hello, ma'am, I'm looking for work. Do you have anything that needs building?" "Yes, I do," she replied, and pointed to her sister's farm. "We were best friends, but she's become so unreasonable, and I can no longer stand the sight of her. I would like you to build a tall fence between our properties so I don't have to look at her." The carpenter said, "Okay, I understand your need, and I know exactly what to do." The sister decided to do her weekly shopping so she would not be in his way, and he got to work. When she returned, she was shocked to find that the carpenter had not built a fence, but instead constructed a beautiful bridge across the creek. It was sturdy and wide with graceful carved handrails and posts. Before she could object to this, her sister came out of the house and saw the bridge. She approached saying, "I have been so foolish. How could I have forgotten that you were the most loving person in my world? I'm so lucky you are my sister." She started across the bridge. Her sister rushed to meet her in the middle. They apologized and hugged and cried a little. Then they turned to the carpenter, who had known exactly what to do, and they wanted to do something nice for him. They offered him other jobs around the farm. But he said, "Thanks, I will be moving on. I have other fences to build." I am so grateful that our Unitarian Universalist tradition keeps me focused on the inherent worth and dignity of every person every day, and provides me with the wisdom of many different traditions to draw upon for guidance in my life. Our hurting world needs less anger and more peace. If each one of us here today healed just one relationship, who knows what might happen? In addition to our own peace talks and peace treaties with those we love, in addition to our own work on our own inner peace, may we all watch for opportunities to build bridges instead of fences wherever reconciliation is needed. So when I heard that today was the first Sunday with coffee hour, I couldn't resist suggesting a hymn. If you've peeked at it, you've already seen, if you've opened or do not open, which you can open now, that we are going to be singing Coffee, Coffee, Coffee to the tune of Holy, Holy, Holy. This is a hymn written by UU minister Peter Rabel, who has a series of such hymns. And I can remember exactly where I was the first time I heard this hymn. I did find, too late for it to be included, one verse that I will read to you after all the coffee verses. Someone wrote, "Welcome diversity. Now we offer herbal tea, English breakfast, harvest spice, or even blackberry, cocoa and hot cider, our circle ever wider. Drink whatever you like in our community." So let us continue standing as willing and able with coffee, coffee, coffee.
standing for the extinguishing of the chalice. Recite with me the words of the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
These are the words of Etienne de Relay. I shall pass this way but once. Any good that I can do, or any kindness I can show to any human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again.
Good morning. How are you?